This is video lesson number 6 in our optics series. Today we're going to be focusing on lenses and lens diagrams. So first of all, we're going to be looking at the most important lens in your life, which is in your eye, and how the human eye works to see images. Then we'll move on to ray diagrams with lenses, and you will need a ruler for today's lesson. And I'm going to use a few different colors of pens, but you don't have to. You can just use one if you wish. So first of all, looking at the diagram of a human eye, we're going to go through and we're going to label a few of the parts because we're going to talk about how we use the lenses in our eyes to see the world around us. So first of all, in your eye, let's start with the parts that you're probably the most familiar with, and those are the ones that you can see from the outside. So first we have an eyelid at the top, which we use to protect our eyes and keep them moist. Okay, then here, this black hole in the middle is the pupil. And it's a hole into your eye that allows light in. Around that, you have the colored part, which is called the iris. Okay, and it's actually a series of muscles that can contract and relax to change the amount of light that can get into your eye. So that's why when you look at something bright, they're going to contract and the pupil will get smaller to let less light in. And when it's darker, it'll dilate and you'll have really big pupils so that the more light possible can get into your eye. Then there's a sort of a covering, a clear hard covering in front of your eye. We're showing it kind of on this diagram with this little shine symbol, and that's the cornea. So the cornea is there to protect the iris and the lens, but it's also used in part of refracting the light when it comes into your eye. So it's involved in both of those processes. Then this white part that surrounds the whole eye, and in this diagram it's showed with this sort of light blue color, okay, is the sclera. And it's sort of a hard white protective covering. Now this part in the middle, this kind of round bit, that is the lens that's in your eye, and it's one of the main factors in adjusting the length, like the focal length, to see whatever images that are either close or far away from you. So it's constantly changing. And the focal length of that lens is changed using these muscles that actually pull and push for the lens to change shape when you're looking at things that are either, close or far away. So those muscles are called ciliary muscles. And they change the shape of the lens. At the back of the eye, we have back here, this is the optic nerve that brings information to the brain. And then there's a couple layers here. This sort of greenish colored one is called the tapetum. And it's involved with night vision, and animals that have better night vision have a more robust tapetum. And then this orange part is the retina. And the retina is the main area where your image is formed in your eye, and it's covered in cells that are special sensory cells that collect that information and send it down the optic nerve. And then finally, this area right here is called the blind spot. And the blind spot is there because that's the spot where the retina is connected to the optic nerve, and there's actually no sensory cells to collect information in that one spot. So, how do eyes work? Basically, the iris, so that colored part, adjusts the size of the pupil, which is the hole, okay, to allow more or less light to enter the eye. The cornea, so the front covering, and the lens refract the light and focus it on the retina at the back, which is where all those sensory organs are, or cells are, pardon me. The optic nerve sends this information to the brain, which interprets the image as being upright. So when you have a picture in front of you, through the lens in the cornea, the shape is flipped upside down in the back of our brain, or back of our eye, pardon me, but our brain knows which way is up and down in the world based on a multitude of different factors. So our brain, even though we see things as being upside down, our brain will flip it the right way around, knowing that the ground should be the bottom. At the bottom of your page, you're going to see a little activity that I highly, highly recommend you try because it only takes a couple of seconds and it's really interesting. So pause the video for a minute and hold this page up in front of you. You're going to close one eye, so close your right eye, and you're going to take your left eye and you're going to look at this number 3 spot. Hold the page sort of an arm's length away, focusing with your left eye just on that number 3 dot, and slowly bring the paper towards you. And you'll actually see this number 2 dot disappear at one point, and it will just look like blue. And the reason for that is because that is your blind spot, and your brain is filling in that blue color thinking that that's what's supposed to be there, but really you can't see that one spot. So pause the video, give that a try. Continuing on with looking at human eyes and the applications of lenses. So we have lenses in our eyes, but we can also use lenses, lots of people have glasses, to correct any problems with our vision. So in a healthy eye, the ciliary muscles, so those are the ones that change the shape of the lens, that are just kind of on the sides here. The ciliary muscles change the shape of the lens, okay, thereby changing its focal length, okay, which allows us to see things that are both close to us and further away. So when you're viewing something that's a distant object, okay, we have relaxed muscles, relaxed ciliary muscles, okay, which produce a thin lens, okay, because they're going to be pulling there, and a longer focal length. Okay, to see stuff that's further away. Stuff that's closer, okay, we're going to have a contracted muscle, so contracted ciliary muscles, which are going to produce a thicker lens with a shorter focal length. So we can focus the image that's closer to us in the right spot in the back of our eye. Not all people's eyes work perfectly well or shaped the same. So there's a couple of different conditions that are extremely common. And you may have one of these, I know I do. And we use corrective lenses to fix the problem. So first one is nearsightedness, also called myopia, is the scientific name. And this is when you can see things that are close to you. So these are people who need glasses to see things that are far away from them. Okay, and they're corrected using a diverging lens. This problem is corrected using a diverging lens. So if you think about the eye being a little bit longer than a usual eye, and you have an image forming not quite at the back, so you end up with a blurry image at the back rather than a clear one. When you put the lens in front, you can help adjust where the focal length is going to be and where your focused picture is going to end up right at the back on the retina where it needs to be. Okay, the other version of this is farsightedness, so it's the opposite, where you can see things that are far away, but you cannot see things that are close. They're all blurry. That's hyperopia, and these are corrected with a converging lens. So in this case, The clear image would be formed behind where the retina is. So where the light hits the retina, you have a blurred image, and the lens can correct that to have the image form in the correct location. So let's talk a bit more about lenses specifically now. The types of lenses and how they refract light. So first type of lens, okay, we have the concave lenses. So types of lens, concave, okay, where you have both sides being concave. They're also called diverging lenses. Okay, because the light is refracted outwards. So here all the light comes in and it's going to be redirected out, spreading the light out. The other type is convex. So biconvex, two convex sides. These are called converging lenses. Okay, because the light is refracted inwards. So now all the light is going to be focused to a single point. Ray diagrams with lenses, okay, have a few important parts that we need to label and go over. And I'm going to start by drawing a diagram here that's just going to have a few rays of light coming in to kind of show what's happening. So I'm going to draw 4 rays just coming into the lens in a straight line from various spots along the lens. So as your rays come in, this is a converging lens, and they're all going to focus through this point, which we're going to call F as the focal point. Focus point. So we'll label that. Make sure you're using a ruler. And all of these, sort of like the mirror stuff, are going to end up focusing on the same focal point throughout, no matter where the light is hitting the lens. So in a converging lens, this point, this focal point, is on the side where the light is actually intersecting. So we call this the principal focus. Because there's actually 2 focal points on any lens because it's double-sided. It's not the same as a mirror where you only have one side of it. So here we have a principal focus, but we also have another focal point on the other side, okay, which is, we'll just call like the non-principal focus, focal point. Okay, the distance between the center, so this is called the lens axis, which is this dashed line through the center of the lens, and that's where we're going to be drawing for our purposes, where we're going to draw all of our changes, all of our refraction happening. In reality, it's more like what you see in this picture, where you're going to have refraction happening at the boundary of where the light meets the glass, and then when the glass meets the air again. So really, it is refracting twice, but because of the shape of the lens and it being symmetrical on both sides, we can do sort of like a shortcut by including a lens axis and showing only one bend, which is going to go from the center axis to the focal point on the other side. Here we have the focal length, which is the same on both sides of the lens. So the focal length on both sides. We still have the principal axis, same as we did with the mirrors. And we have a front and a back to our lens, similar to what we did with mirrors, but this time it's a little bit different because the light is passing through rather than reflecting. So the front of the lens, okay, is where the light is coming from, and the back of the lens is where the light is passing through to. So let's try some diagrams with converging lenses. So similar to our mirror stuff, we're going to have 3 lines for every diagram to show our 3 lines of evidence. And I'm going to use 3 different colors similar to last time. So the first one here I'll do in blue. Okay, so this is our principal or our parallel line. So it's going to come in parallel, hit the lens axis, and go out through the focal point on the other side. So we'll call this our parallel line. So looking at our example here at the bottom, this is the top of our object. It's going to go in to the center of the lens, parallel to the principal axis, and out through the focal point. So from the center of the lens, I'm going to line it up with the principal focal point and send it out that way. Okay, so again, this front focal point is the principal focus for a converging lens, because that's where the light is converging to. Our next one, okay, is going to go through center. So I'll use red for this one. So our red line is going to go through center. Now center is a little bit different than mirrors. In this case, it's going through the vertex, okay, of the principal axis and the lens axis. So in our example here, I'm going to line up my top of my object with the center point and draw a line all the way through, just completely straight. And lastly, we'll call it our focus line. And the focus line is going to go through the non-principal. Through the non-principal focus. So in this case, that's this one. So from the top of my object, I'm going to go through the non-principal focus and hit the lens axis. After it hits the lens axis, I went a little bit far there, I'll erase that. At the center, it's going to go out parallel to the principal axis on the other side. So out parallel, and then you're looking for the spot where the 3 lines intersect. And that is where your image is going to appear. So here, I'm going to have my image show up there. So there's my image. Now, when we do characteristics of images with lenses, it works the same way as with mirrors, but there's a few differences in just the definitions of whether something's real or virtual and things like that. So we're going to come back to that in a minute when we talk about that at the end. So we will come back to this page and we're going to do the image characteristics of that, but in a minute. Okay, one more example of a converging lens. Let's do another one. So again, grab your ruler. I'm going to start here, number 1, with my parallel line, in parallel, out through the principal focus. So at the top of my object, in parallel to the lens axis, and out through the focal point. Then my next line in red is my center. So I'm going right through the middle. Take the top of my object, line it up with the center point, and go straight through. finally, we have our non-principal focus line. So it's going to go through focus on the front and then out parallel. For this one, you see how we can't do like we did before where we went through it. We have the non-principal focal point behind the object, but we're still going to line it up the same way. So you take the top of your object and you line it up with the non-principal focus, and it's going to go up this time and out parallel to the principal axis. So now you can probably see that the 3 refracted rays are never going to touch on this side of the lens. And so the only place they're going to meet is on the front side. So we need to extend these backward, similar to the way we did it when we were extending them backwards with mirrors. But this time we're doing it on the front side instead of the back. So I'm going to extend all of my refracted rays backwards in dashed lines to show that they're not real light. They're just virtual light. And make sure you're only extending back your refracted rays. Don't do any of your incident rays. There we go. And the last one through center. Great, there we go. So now you see the place where they meet is going to be on the front side, and it's going to produce an image here that looks like this. I'll label that as being my image. Again, we're going to do image characteristics of this, but we'll come back and we'll do image characteristics of both at the end. Moving on to diverging lenses. Diverging lenses are a little bit different because their principal focus is on the front side rather than the back side. So similar to the last diagram, I'm going to go through and I'm going to do some lines and some labeling for the diverging lens. So I'm going to draw in 2 incident rays on the top, 2 on the bottom. And for these ones, the principal focal point is this front one. So here, let's label that as the principal focus. So the light that comes off of that lens axis is going to be in line with the principal focus, which is why when we look at, say, this first one, we're going to line it up with the principal focus and it's going to go out. So it's diverging the light. It's going to spread it out in line with the principal focus on the front side of the lens. So this again is the focal length. Same on both sides. Here we have the other focal point, but it's the non-principal focus. This is the front of the lens and this is the back of the lens. And the place where all of these rays are going to meet, okay, is going to be on this front principal focus. So if we're looking for that spot, when we extend the lines backwards, okay, as virtual rays that are dashed, we'll find the location here on the principal focus where they would meet each other. So now we can see that spot. So when we do diagrams with diverging lenses, it's a bit similar to when we did convex mirrors in that there's only one type of diagram with diverging lenses. So with converging lenses, it's similar to concave mirrors in that depending on how close or how far the object is to the lens, there's a whole bunch of different cases and different image characteristics you can get. But with diverging lenses, they're all going to look exactly the same. So let's do an example here. First line is our parallel line, so it's going in parallel. From the top of your object to the lens axis. I'm going to draw a lens axis on here actually just to make it a little bit clearer. So straight perpendicular to the principal axis, straight down the middle. We'll just add that in. Line it up. So it's going to go in parallel to the principal axis. And it's still really following the same rules. It just looks a bit different because the principal focus is on the front side. So it's going to go out of the lens as if through that principal focus. So lining it up with your principal focus, the front side one, and going out. Next line is the same. It's still your center line. So it's going to go directly through center as we did before. So top of your object, straight through, there's your center line. And finally your focus line, which is going in through the non-principal focus, which in a diverging lens is the front one. We're going to line up the top of our object with that focal line or focal point and go in until we hit the lens axis and then out parallel to the principal axis. Okay, now again, we're seeing 1, 2, 3 rays, but none of them are going to meet on this back side of the lens. So we need to extend them backwards into the front side of the lens. So there's that one. And we need to extend this one backwards as well. And our center line is already intersecting with those, so we don't need to worry about that one. And they meet here. So this is where our image is going to show up. Now let's talk about characteristics. So we have a few images here. We're going to use a lot of the same vocabulary, but it looks a little bit different in lenses than mirrors. So first of all, type, we still have two types. We have real and virtual. So our first type here, we have real. They're located in the back of the lens and could be captured on a screen. Their orientation is always going to be inverted. So it still follows the same rules in that real images are inverted and virtual images are upright. So real, or the other option is virtual. Virtual images are located in front of the lens. Okay, and they are always going to be upright. Magnification is looking at the height of the object and the height of the image being compared to each other. So height of the object compared to the height of the image. If the image is smaller than the object, then the magnification is less than 1. If the image is larger than the object, the magnification is greater than 1. And if they're the same size, then the magnification is equal to 1. For distance, okay, is looking at the distance between the object and the lens is called DO. And the distance between the image and the lens, it's called DI. For these, if an object is closer to the lens than the object, okay, then you're going to have a magnification that's greater than 1. If it's further away, it's going to be less than 1. And if it's equal distant, then it'll be equal to 1. So let's go back now to characterize some of those images that we drew in the last couple of pages. So here are characteristics of our image. The type for this one, it occurs on the back side of the lens. It's created with real rays of light that are converging and meeting there. So the type for this one is real. It's upside down, which means it's inverted. And remember, real and inverted always go together. Virtual and upright always go together. And if you look at the distance and the size, it's closer and smaller than our object is. So m is less than 1. For the next image, so this one, image characteristics, it's on the front side of the lens and it's created with virtual rays that have been extended backwards, not where the real light is. So this is going to be a virtual image and it's upright. And the magnification, because it's further away and it's larger, okay, is going to be greater than 1. All right. Looking at diverging lenses. Now, the nice thing about diverging lenses is that they will always have the same image characteristics. Okay, so here's our image characteristics. Okay, it's on the front side of the lens, okay, created by extending rays backwards. It's not where real light is touching each other. So it's going to be virtual. It's upright. And in this case, it's closer to the lens and smaller, which means that the magnification is less than 1. Okay, and this is the same for all diverging lenses. Whereas with converging lenses, it depends on how close or how far your object is to the actual lens. All right, to finish this one up, a few applications of lenses and mirrors working together. We have a couple different types of telescopes. So in telescopes, you have 2 different types. So there's refracting telescopes. Okay, which use 2 lenses, okay, with different focal lengths. To see distant objects that are really far away and magnify them so that you can see them. You can also have reflecting telescopes, okay, that use a combination of mirrors and lenses to view things that are really far away. So the light comes in, it's going to be focused using a concave mirror, redirected by a plane mirror, and then you have a converging lens to focus the light in the back of your eye and magnify the image. For microscopes, okay, we have the objective lenses. We're going to look at microscopes in our bio unit. So objective lens is smaller than the eyepiece lens. I'll point those out. So this is the eyepiece lens up here. The objective lenses are the ones that you kind of rotate around. Okay, and for this, the image is formed by the objective lens. And it's going to be larger than the object. So we're going to use the image that is formed in the objective lens, and then we're going to magnify it again using the eyepiece lens. So the lens is larger than the object. So we can take something really tiny and we can magnify and make it look bigger. Okay, so now you have some practice to do. So pages 33 and 34, you have a few different cases of looking at things being at different distances away from a converging lens, okay, all the way to super close. And then you have a couple of different distances for diverging lenses. For each lens, you need to show the 3 different lines, okay, coming through. You have to find your image and give your image characteristics, so type, orientation, and magnification for each one. When you're done, take pictures and submit it to Edsby, and I'll review them and give you any feedback, or you can ask me any questions if you need to.